billboards claiming to be #1 trusted news, ads offering a glimpse of China before communism, unsolicited newspapers showing up at people's doors from London to Los Angeles, people holding banners with photos of organ harvesting in public squares across the world, a secretive compound in upstate New York. All of these link back to just one man, Li Hongxue, the living god of a religion he founded in the 90s, Falun Gong. What began as a simple form of meditation evolved into a sprawling global propaganda network, one that attacks China, LGBTQ people, immigrants, and modern medicine, and believes that Donald Trump is a killer angel sent to vanquish the demonic forces bringing the apocalypse. This is the story of how a man who claimed to be God built a misinformation empire and made millions off of fear and faith.
That the Transiloids were abducting, mutilating cows to develop antitoxins for themselves.
但是大多数呢都不让它表现出来，因为那么多人。
This video is sponsored by Give Directly. Visit givedirectly.org/cogito to send cash directly to families in need. More on that later. This is Qigong. It's a mix of traditional Chinese, slow-moving exercises, breathing, and meditation. People do it for perceived spiritual and health benefits. Tai Chi is a form of Qigong that you probably already know. During the 1980s, China experienced a Qigong boom. Hundreds of millions of Chinese people started practicing Qigong regularly in parks across the country, and Qigong masters became celebrities. The Chinese government gave Qigong state backing, hoping that it would reduce healthcare costs. In 1992, Li Hongxue left his job in a cereal factory and began his own Qigong practice called falun gong, also known as falun dafa. It roughly means law wheel exercise. But Falun Gong arrived late to the boom. If Li wanted to stand out, he needed to offer something special. Qigong masters usually offered healing as a benefit for their techniques. Li didn't just offer a cure from illness though. He offered spiritual salvation. Li said the cause of illness was karma, and that practicing Falun Gong, listening to Li, and following his moral code would burn off karma, which would improve health and help his devoted disciples reach paradise through a process called consummation. Around 1994, Li began to fashion himself not just as a Qigong master, but as a religious leader and then as a god. He said that he was better than Buddha and Jesus, who are actually his disciples. He claimed that he created the earth and established the music of mankind. Li said that he had control over law bodies, which allowed him to control reality and read people's thoughts. His law bodies would protect his disciples from harm, even if a car hit them. But if you tried to test this and stepped in front of a car, he would not protect you because his true followers would just believe him. Li claimed that his advanced disciples would develop supernatural powers, like the ability to levitate and see through walls. They would live in perfect health. They would be better than other humans, referred to as ordinary people. In Falun Gong, Li must always be called master. No disciple is allowed to explain or interpret Li's teachings, and they must say, as the master says, before quoting. During a 1999 interview with Time magazine, Li revealed many people had learned to levitate just like him. David Copperfield, for example. Just to clarify, no one has ever seen Li levitate, and David Copperfield can't levitate either. In that same interview, Li spoke about how, since the beginning of this century, aliens have begun to invade. The aliens want the human body. The aliens will take the opportunity to replace the human soul, and by doing so, they will enter Earth and become Earthlings. Li also claimed that there was a 2 billion-year-old nuclear reactor hidden in Gabon, which proved the existence of ancient alien cultures. There is no such thing in Gabon. Instead, there's a weird natural phenomenon with uranium and algae going on in Gabon. Google it, it's pretty cool. Li claimed that aliens had introduced aeroplanes, computers, and science. Everyone thinks that scientists invent on their own, when in fact the inspiration is manipulated by the aliens. However, Li's most important claim is that there is a horrific apocalypse rapidly approaching, and that practicing Falun Gong, and only Falun Gong, would save people from destruction. Non-followers were irredeemable and would face destruction in a horrific manner. Li claimed that bad morals would bring the end times. Feminism, rock music, and in his words, repulsive homosexuality were the worst offenders. Li claimed that the gods' first target of annihilation would be homosexuals. It's not me who would destroy them, but gods. Gods can't tolerate their existence. Li claimed that heaven is racially segregated, and so mixed race people have no heaven to go to, and so are abandoned by the gods. To Li, race mixing was another alien plot. Because Li teaches that practicing Falun Gong cures all illnesses, taking medicine in Falun Gong is seen as a lack of faith. One ex-Falun Gong disciple said it's their belief that they don't need medicine because they're superhuman beings. A daughter of one follower said that her mother stopped taking her blood pressure medication after joining Falun Gong. She died shortly after. If it wasn't for Falun Gong, she'd still be with us. It would have taken 2 tablets a day and she would still be with us. This happened so frequently that Li claimed that new followers who joined Falun Gong and then suddenly died were demons sent to damage Falun Dafa. Despite his stranger claims, Li's promises of perfect health and salvation were a huge success. Li began raking in millions of dollars. Li claimed that he had 100 million followers by 1999. In reality, it was probably between 2 and 10 million. In the late 90s, Chinese journalists and scientists began debunking Qigong's claims and exposing corrupt Qigong masters. In response to increasing criticism, Li relocated permanently to the United States in 1998. Unlike other Qigong groups, Falun Gong's response to any negative coverage was to counterattack. Between 1996 and mid-1999, they held over 300 protests. Just one typical example involved 2,000 protesters surrounding Beijing television after they heard a documentary about a Falun Gong disciple that became psychotic. The pressure led the station to fire the reporter responsible for the documentary. Falun Gong urged the Chinese government to censor their opponents. Beijing enforced a media blackout on criticism of Falun Gong. But a university magazine in Tianjin in April of 1999 published a negative article on Falun Gong anyway. In response, 6,000 Falun Gong protesters occupied the university for 3 days, demanding a retraction, which the editors refused. China sent in the police, which provoked a riot resulting in around 45 arrests. The Falun Gong wanted the criticism to stop and demanded the release of those arrested in the riot. So on the early morning of the 25th of April 1999, 10,000 Falun Gong protesters surrounded Beijing's Zhongnanhai compound, which housed the Communist Party of China's Central Committee. This is the very heart of Chinese politics. They stayed for about 12 hours until the Chinese premier told the protesters that they would address their grievances. The sheer number of followers summoned by Li, combined with the Chinese intelligence failure to anticipate it, rattled the Chinese state. This was taken as a direct threat and proved to be a deadly mistake. In July of 1999, China banned Falun Gong and declared it an evil cult. They issued an arrest warrant for Li, but he was already in the United States. Thousands of his followers left behind in China were rounded up, detained without trial, and subjected to brutal beatings, torture, and in many cases, death in custody. A practice which continues to today. Until this crackdown, Falun Gong was mostly unknown in Western media. Now with the international spotlight on him, Li mastered the art of manipulating the Western press, who were always eager for more stories of China's oppression. He told his followers to just talk about the persecution we've suffered. Don't talk to ordinary people about our spiritual beliefs. Tell them that we're just doing exercises. They will immediately support you. Western media receive most of their information about Falun Gong from the Rachlan Media Group. The Rachlan Media Group is managed by Gail Rachlan, one of Li's most devoted disciples, which means the Western press was getting their information about Falun Gong from Falun Gong. The Western media embraced Li, calling him a family values nostalgist with round, soft, Buddha-like features and smiling brown eyes. In 1999, 6 countries nominated Li for the Nobel Peace Prize, And the Western press, without any question, quoted Li saying that he had no role in the protest and was unaware that it would even occur. However, the Chinese reported that Li arrived in China on April 22nd and stayed for 2 days. Over a month after denying this, Li admitted that this was correct. He was in China on the eve of the protest, and he most likely directed it before returning to the US to avoid the consequences. The Chinese state, through its brutal crackdown on Falun Gong, gifted Li a necessary piece of his apocalyptic vision. For years, Li claimed that the apocalypse is around the corner, but the cause was always kept vague. Now he claimed that the Communist Party of China were a group of demons sent by the old gods to destroy the world. The Chinese state offered to end their violent detention of Falun Gong disciples if they signed a document recanting their faith and stopped publicly protesting. Li demanded that his followers in China continue to confront the state. He said that by suffering, their bad karma is burnt off, guaranteeing them a place in his paradise. Li called those unwilling to suffer torture malignant tumors, and Li planned this torture as a test to expose them. When this test concludes, all bad people will be destroyed by gods. Those daft disciples who are able to come through the test will leave true consummation. Those people who will be left behind will have to eradicate sins by paying with horrible suffering. From New York, Li praised followers willing to lose their human lives. Li demanded that they make sacrifices that he himself was not willing to make. From 2000 onwards, Li's messages to his followers became increasingly harsh. This created a conflict loop. Li wanted to use his followers to collapse the Chinese state, and China consistently reacted with violence. At this point, Falun Gong had transformed into a fully fledged cult, centered on a charismatic leader, exploiting his followers by asserting that he was a god. He maintained control through instilling fear of an impending apocalypse and his apparent mind-reading powers, insisting that only he and his religion could save humanity. After being banned in China, Falun Gong continued to try and silence its critics. For example, they tried to sue the Auckland Children's Christmas Parade Trust because they weren't allowed to march in the Children's Christmas Parade. Falun Gong members harassed the trust chairman so severely he had to hire private security. Falun Gong lost that court case. Falun Gong have filed over 100 different lawsuits since 2001 in many countries across the world, and they've lost most. But much like Scientology, they mostly use lawsuits as a harassment technique to silence perceived critics. In 2001, Falun Gong launched the Global Internet Freedom Consortium, or GIFC. They recruited over 50 computer scientists from Google, NASA, and Microsoft, all Falun Gong disciples who would work for free. By 2002, they were hacking TV stations across China to display pro-Falun Gong messages. They also developed FreeGate, a software tool to bypass China's internet restrictions. This work attracted Washington's attention, who, through the United States Agency for Global Media, or USAGM, funneled millions of dollars to the GIFC. After a Republican senator threatened to delay State Department appointments unless more funds were allocated to the GIFC, the US Congress earmarked $30 million for them in 2010 alone. This improved the Falun Gong's finances and allowed the US government to broadcast their state-run media like Voice of America and Radio Free Asia into China. Falun Gong's campaign against China attracted the attention of Mark Palmer, speechwriter for Ronald Reagan and Henry Kissinger and founder of the National Endowment for Democracy, an organization set up under President Ronald Reagan. The idea was that the National Endowment for Democracy would do somewhat overtly what the CIA had been doing covertly for decades. The National Endowment for Democracy, funded by the US Congress, funds what it describes as pro-democracy groups in countries like China, Cuba, and Thailand. It has also funded anti-labor union movements within the US and helped overthrow Haiti's democratically elected government. It provides no financial support to pro-democracy efforts within US allies like Saudi Arabia, a brutal, absolute monarchy. Palmer founded the Friends of the Falun Gong, an organization whose primary source of funding is the American government. From 2004 to 2015, the Friends of the Falun Gong transferred nearly $3 million a year to the Falun Gong. Their lobbying pressured the Bush and Obama administrations to provide tens of millions of dollars to Falun Gong affiliate organizations. Much of this funding went to Sounds of Hope Radio, New Tang Dynasty Television, Shen Yun, and the Epoch Times, all Falun Gong run media. The Canadian government, through the Canada Media Fund, provides funds to produce media for Canada's ethnic minorities. From 2010 to 2016, the Falun Gong-owned New Tang Dynasty Television received almost $18 million of Canadian public funds. all other ethnic media outlets received just $13 million in funding. The Falun Gong and Li were now incredibly well funded and had important political connections. They used this to build an empire. If you drive just 2 hours outside of New York City into the dense forests of the Shunganuk Mountains, you'll come across a gorgeous lake with ancient Chinese-style temples. This is Dragon Springs, also known as the Mountain. This is Master Li's guarded, secretive and tax-exempt compound. Dragon Springs has expanded into a massive 400-acre complex, much of it paid for by the Friends of the Falun Gong and therefore the US taxpayer. Dragon Springs received $615,000 from the Friends of the Falun Gong in 2014 alone. The local residents nearby report relentless expansion, including plans for a 920-seat music hall, 1,100 spaces car park, and housing for 500 people. The local Deer Park Rural Alliance has opposed these developments for years, claiming that Dragon Springs expands without permits and threatens the local ecosystem and rivers with waste. I contacted the Deer Park Rural Alliance, who stated that many residents still have a lot of questions, doubts and concerns on the expansion, as well as the safety and oversight of the facilities and the lack of transparency. After a local resident, Grace Woodard, founded the Rural Alliance, the Falun Gong affiliated newspaper The Epoch Times ran a story inferring that she was working on behalf of China and shared photos of her mailbox online. At Dragon Springs in 2006, Li created a new tool to help spread his message, a dance troupe called Shen Yun. If you live in a major city, you've most likely walked by one of their ads with colourful dancers in incredible poses promising to show you China before communism. From New York City to Taipei, Shen Yun dancers flip and toss sleeves on stage in incredible routines that combine dance and religious anti-communist propaganda. Shows include songs with lyrics like "Atheism and evolution are deadly ideas," and a show-stopping performance with a world-ending tsunami in the shape of Karl Marx's face that wipes away a corrupt society that includes men holding hands. Some uncomfortable scenes portray Falun Gong followers having their organs harvested by Chinese police. Since 2006, forced organ harvesting has been one of Falun Gong's most prominent claims. You can see them protesting in public squares around the world. They believe that since their organs are spiritually superior to ordinary organs, the Chinese state wants them. The thing is, the claim has nearly no evidence and has been dismissed by Harry Wu, the Chinese dissident who exposed China's policy of harvesting organs from executed criminals in 1994. Wu spent 19 years in Chinese labor camps. That didn't stop the Falun Gong from calling him a Chinese spy after he investigated their claims and found that there was nearly no evidence. Shen Yun, with shows across 5 continents, has amassed $265 million in assets. Despite this wealth, the Canon Media Fund has contributed over $250,000 in public funds to Shen Yun. The Shen Yun School, located at Dragon Springs, houses the dancers, some as young as 12, in near total isolation, often separated from their parents. Master Li's powers keep them in line. Master Li, first of all, can read everyone's minds. I grew up with this notion that my thoughts were always being monitored. On the mountain, they treated him like a god. Despite grueling routines, Shen Yun performers are offered little medical care. One performer said, "If you take any kind of medication or go to a hospital, that means you're a bad practitioner. It means you do not fully trust Master Li." During a performance, one performer landed badly and dislocated their knee. It was just popped back into place and they continued to dance for 2 hours. They never saw a doctor. A violinist in the Shen Yun orchestra felt sharp pains in his shoulder. Li touched him and told him that he was healed. The pain continued for years, but he was told it was because he didn't believe hard enough. Eventually, he left Falun Gong, finally saw a doctor, and discovered that he had a bulging disc in his spine. The young girls who perform in Shen Yun are often told that they are too fat, and many develop eating disorders. If they did, Li would perform exorcisms on them to help cure them of this personal failure that caused the illness. The disorders continued for years. Performers who wanted to quit were told that they would go to hell and would die as soon as they left the compound, since Master Li would no longer protect them. Shen Yun is registered as a non-profit company based in New York. Unaware audiences pay hundreds for a ticket, while Shen Yun performers are usually unpaid. Shen Yun tells performers that each show will save the audience. Any failures would doom the audience to hell. If you don't do it right, then it's on you. The universe is not saved because of you. In the year 2000, John Tang, a Georgia Tech student and Falun Gong disciple, launched the Epoch Times from his Atlanta basement. It's now run as part of the Epoch Media Group, which also operates New Tang Dynasty Television, all still under Tang's leadership as CEO. Their mission was simple: save the world from the apocalyptic battle against demonic Chinese communism. Staffed mostly by unpaid Falun Gong volunteers, the Epoch Times and New Tang Dynasty were seen by Master Li as our media. For years, the Epoch Times, which is a niche anti-China newspaper, scattered on New York City street corners and tossed at doorsteps. But in 2009, Li delivered a speech at the Epoch Times offices with a clear order: become regular media. A few years later, Donald Trump announced that he would run for President of the United States on a platform that was explicitly anti-China. Falun Gong came to see Trump as a kind of killer angel, summoned from heaven to smite the Chinese government. In 2016, the Epoch Times took a massive partisan shift. Their content was already critical of China, now would target Islam, immigration, and at all times promote traditional values. Steve Klett, who covered the 2016 Trump campaign for the Epoch Times, said editors told him to write favorable coverage of Trump and censor criticism or controversial topics. In 2016, a mass shooter killed 50 people at Pulse, a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. We weren't allowed to cover stories involving homosexuality, but that bumps up against them wanting to cover Islamic terrorism. So I wrote 4 articles without using the word gay. After Trump won the 2016 election, the Epoch Times integrated itself into his orbit. Quickly, infamous far-right organizer and Trump's chief strategist Steve Bannon began working with New Tang Dynasty. Bannon pushed Trump into making Michael Pak the leader of the US AGM, the same federal agency that funded the Falun Gong for decades. Pak fired all the US AGM leadership he saw as being soft on China and sent more funds to Falun Gong. Pak then appointed the Epoch Times columnist Roger L. Simon to the US AGM's board. President Trump, his family, and his staff began regularly sharing stories from the Epoch Times. Epoch Times journalists were granted access to the White House. One even passed Trump an envelope with unknown contents. The Epoch Times attempts to look like legacy media with a clean webpage and serif fonts, but its articles maintain Falun Gong beliefs like, after the anti-war movement faded in the West in the 1970s, the devil manipulated rebellious adolescents to channel their energies into agitating for feminism, environmentalism, and the legalization of homosexuality. The Epoch Times claims feminism, welfare, divorce, public school, and homosexuality are all communist plots. It should be noted that Falun Gong belief states that communists are literal demons, and wretched demons just deserve to be killed, and that killing demons saves both the killer and the demon. So, if the To Be Harmed life knew, it would stretch its neck out and let you kill it. It would happily, cheerfully let you kill it. While the Epoch Times regularly publishes harmless stuff like 3-year-old remembers past life as a snake, other content was explicitly hateful, such as content about sinister queers or outright lies about 2-year-olds undergoing gender transitions, something that has never happened. Then there's blatant disinformation like meteorologists, scientists explain why there is no climate emergency. This article claimed that 1,609 scientists signed a report denying climate change. When you look into the report though, you discover that there are essentially no scientists on it. Many of the signatories are connected to the fossil fuel and mining industries, and some of them are even lobbyists. The founder of the project and 8 other signatories are current or ex-employees of Shell, people with a vested interest in denying climate change. Some of the entries are IT experts, fishermen, and people with an interest in meteorology. In the run-up to the 2020 US election, the Epoch Times created dozens of Facebook pages posting clickbait, usually with cute babies or animals. For example, this one here of a cute dog with over 8 million views and a link to subscribe to the Epoch Times. Epoch Media published videos of cute animals tens of thousands of times on over 100 Facebook pages, racking up billions of views. The Epoch Times created an entire network of dozens of pages supported by bots and fake users. Many accounts were just Vietnamese users posing as Trump supporters in groups like Hispanos por Trump. The Epoch Times spent $2 million on pro-Trump ads in 2019, second only to the Trump campaign itself. When in mid-2019, the Epoch Times was caught mislabeling their ads to get around Facebook's policies about political advertising, they stopped advertising. Then suddenly, pages appeared with names like Honest Paper, Patriots of America, Pure American Journalism, and Best News, all of which ran ads linking back to the Epoch Times and its subscription page. By December of 2019, the Epoch Times had spent $11 million on Facebook ads in total. That same month, Facebook removed hundreds of Epoch-linked accounts and pages, some with millions of followers. Facebook stated that the Epoch Times had leveraged foreign actors posing as Americans to push political content, and tried to hide the source of their political ads. Facebook then banned them from all future advertising. Not only was Facebook easy to manipulate, it was also home to the Epoch Times' desired audience: the elderly. The Epoch Times specifically targeted conservatives aged 60 and over, and in their ads they even boasted that they had increased their font size by 20%.
And take a look at this. We recently increased our font size by 20%, so it's easier on the eyes, easier to read, and awesome.
As soon as the Epoch Times was banned from Facebook in 2019, millions of YouTube users began to be constantly exposed to ads for the Epoch Times, who spent more than $3 million plastering YouTube with ads.
Hey, doesn't it feel like there's communists everywhere?
How communist ideology has been subverting our nation and compromising our children's future.
How socialist and communist ideologies have been infiltrating our society.
In the ads, their spokesman complained about communists and the mainstream media, and claimed that the Epoch Times has no spin and no false narratives and was independent.
Real news delivered to your home every single week that doesn't push any false narrative, doesn't spin the truth, and doesn't have any hidden agendas.
He never mentions its Falun Gong connections, its government funding, or its long-term religious, anti-medicine, and anti-China agenda. The Epoch Times leadership and funding is kept mostly secret, normally a bad sign for a news outlet, and they are also registered as a non-profit and so are exempt from most federal taxes. They claim their goal is independent journalism outside of political interests, but their tax filings show large amounts of funding from conservative organizations, receiving about $11 million in donations between 2020 and 2022. In just 2021, the Epoch Times received $55,750 from the National Christian Charitable Foundation, which tends to fund anti-LGBT and anti-immigrant groups. They also received $31,000 from Donors Trust, known as the dark money ATM of the conservative movement. And that's just a fraction of their conservative donations. Not exactly outside of political interest. The Epoch Times representatives usually deny any affiliation with Falun Gong, but the staff and owners are nearly all Falun Gong.
When I found Falun Dafa, I found the answers to those questions. I found the meaning of my life.
In 2021, the Epoch Times provided $10.4 million in funding to Shenyun and another $8.3 million to New Tang Dynasty. COVID birthed a new ecosystem of online conspiracy which was eagerly fueled by the Epoch Times. The Epoch Times heavily pushed the conspiracy that China had engineered COVID, or what they called the CCP virus, in a lab to use as a biological weapon against the world. They produced a documentary that got tens of millions of views that pushed this idea. Nearly every interview in that documentary is from an Epoch Media Group employee, an anti-vaxxer, a crypto salesman, or people that write about war with China. The overwhelming scientific consensus is that the virus had a natural origin. The claims of the documentary are debunked here. The Epoch Times itself doesn't seem to actually believe the engineering theory, because the Epoch Times also claimed that magic could cure COVID. Recently, there were several cases of people recovering from the CCP pneumonia miraculously after they condemned the CCP. There were no such cases. Condemning the Communist Party of China did not cure COVID. An Epoch Times article also claimed that monkey virus DNA found in COVID-19 shots caused cancer. This was also completely false. Another article claimed that the horse dewormer medication ivermectin is safe and effective against COVID. It wasn't. This same author, who is not a doctor, wrote how baking soda cures cancer. It does not. The Epoch Times also claimed that the vaccine caused deadly blood clots, a claim that was amplified by conservative podcasters.
Welcome back to the Stu Peters Show. So as many of you saw over the weekend, there was an article published in the Epoch Times
that this is truly part of a mass genocide operation.
COVID spikes the chances of blood clots. Vaccines reduce that chance. After Trump lost the 2020 US election, the Epoch Times became a repeat spreader of election misinformation. Months after the election, the Epoch Times refused to acknowledge the results. When the Epoch Times tried to sue a reporter to silence criticism of their connections to the January 6 rioters, they lost because the report was substantially true. Another part of the Falun Gong network is China Uncensored, a huge YouTube channel that produces anti-China content that told their audiences directly that they are not affiliated with Falun Gong and that it only gives its videos to New Tang Dynasty for translation to Chinese. But the show's host is a Falun Gong disciple. The show was filmed at the New Tang Dynasty studios. The channel's name has New Tang Dynasty in it. The very small team the host claims works on the show are New Tang Dynasty employees. Another Epoch Mini production was Edge of Wonder, which racked up tens of millions of views until YouTube shut it down in late 2020. They covered stuff like,
All heard about the deep state, the shadow government, the cabal, or the Illuminati.
As we said before, this all comes down to eugenics and the depopulation of the human race. So they want to rid the world of the ones who they deem aren't good enough and make the perfect human race. Also, according to almost everyone fighting against the deep state, including QAnon, they would also have everyone practice their religion, which is Satanism. Look, if mind control is happening, we need to know what it is that they're doing.
Alongside alien conspiracy videos that included incredible lines like,
That the Trantiloids were abducting, mutilating cows to develop antitoxins for themselves, located and derived from within the unique cow physiology.
Edge of Wonder also pushed the QAnon conspiracy theory, claiming that there is a secret global satanic pedophile ring of cannibals being taken down by Trump, who communicates with believers through cryptic posts on 4chan. This is an odd theory considering that rich and famous sexual offenders can operate out in the open with no consequences. One Edge of Wonder video, 13 Bloodlines and Their Diabolical Endgame, makes some questionable historical claims.
In mockery and imitation of God's 12 tribes, Satan blessed 12 bloodlines. One of these bloodlines was the Ishmaeli bloodline, from which a special elite line developed alchemy, assassination techniques, and other occult practices. One bloodline was from Egyptian Celtic Druidic, from which Druidism was developed.
Their ultimate goal is to combine their satanic bloodlines, occult powers, and their financial dominance to herald in a one world government and the Antichrist to create hell on earth in spite of the divine.
The story goes that they had relations and even intermarried with American Indian chieftain bloodlines to capture the occult spiritual power of those people and absorbed as much of their culture pertaining to magic and rituals that they could.
Their source for the video is this book, which just claims with no evidence whatsoever to know how Satan created 13 evil bloodlines that have somehow run the world for thousands of years. The book is, of course, obsessed with the Jews. The Epoch Times denied any connection to Edge of Wonder, but the hosts were Epoch Times employees and it was produced by New Tang Dynasty. Ben Hurley, who ran Australia's Epoch Times, said, Falun Gong people believe that they are higher spiritual beings, that ordinary people are ignorant and literally sort of dirty, deluded. They don't know what they want. And so for them, their job is to save ordinary people, even if that requires lying. And lying made Lee and the Epoch Times a lot of money. In 2017, they had a revenue of just $7 million. In 2022, they saw a revenue of $128 million. New Tang Dynasty skyrocketed to 30 million Facebook followers. Just the English version of the Epoch Times has nearly 9 million followers. The Epoch Times is now available in 33 countries and in 21 languages. It's a favourite among the German far right. One Epoch Times Germany article even recommended deporting people based on DNA results. In July of 2024, the Epoch Times was rocked by a scandal, one that answered questions that nearly every single journalist had about them. How on earth is a modern news outlet actually profitable and able to spend this much on ads? Well, it turns out that they are running a massive $67 million money laundering scam that stole unemployment insurance benefits and laundered them through crypto and prepaid debit cards. This scandal has taken the wind out of their sails for a bit. The Epoch Times was much quieter during the 2024 American election, but if their history shows us anything, is that they will find new cracks in society to exploit, and that Master Lee, a man that looks to feudal China for inspiration, from the safety of his compound, surrounded by fawning followers and supported financially by their labour, is willing to lie, cheat and steal to realise his vision, an apocalyptic showdown with China. It's easy to feel disheartened by stories like these of manipulation, exploitation and the harm they cause to society. Every day we see rampant unfairness, the rich get richer while the poor get poorer. But we're not helpless. There's a way to fight back against cynicism and frustration and make a direct, positive impact in the world. And it's not through a corporation or through middlemen, but through you. Meet Give Directly, the sponsor of this video and a revolutionary approach to global aid. Unlike traditional aid that can be slow and wasteful, Give Directly trusts the people they're helping. Give Directly uses mobile banking, now widespread in Africa and Asia, to send cash directly, no strings attached, to the world's poorest families. There's no middlemen and no waste. It's simple, effective, and common sense. Look, I'm an evidence-based person. I demand proof before I believe something. With nearly 1,000 academic studies, cash transfers are one of the most studied aid interventions of all time. Give Directly's site is filled with study after study, proving cash transfers to be one of the most efficient ways to reduce poverty. Families know what they need. When provided with cash, they can start a business, pay for surgery, buy a second-hand motorbike, build a home, or buy a cow. That's the versatility of cash. People decide for themselves instead of relying on aid organizations thousands of kilometers away to choose for them. Rather than clothes or food being shipped in from rich countries which kill demand in the local economy, cash transfer keeps money circulating locally, increasing growth. In Kenya, for example, every $1,000 in direct cash given to households grew the surrounding economy by $2,500. Even neighboring villages where no cash was delivered benefited. This is an efficient method of reducing worldwide poverty. Studies show cash transfers lead to a 27% reduction in illness, a 70% drop in child mortality, and children have higher vaccination rates, better cognition, and are 42% more likely to attend school, while their parents are more likely to start businesses and have 20% higher incomes. If you watched my video on Haiti, you may recall just how badly the aid money was used in the aftermath of the earthquake. Nearly all aid money remained in the United States. Haitians got nothing. However, a handful of small local charities literally just put money in envelopes and sent it to Haitians. These were some of the rare success stories that had a positive impact and helped Haitians actually rebuild. People on the ground know what they need and how to best spend money. Since 2009, Give Directly has delivered over $850 million directly into the hands of 1.6 million people. That's why I've teamed up with Give Directly and other Nebula creators to support a village in Baringo, Kenya. The people here struggle with an inability to afford school fees, food insecurity, and a lack of access to clean water. Together, we're raising funds to help 164 families, about 690 people. This isn't about charity, this is about building real progress and growth. Our goal is to give $850 to each family. With this money, they can stop focusing on just surviving and start building a stable, brighter future, which impacts all of us. By giving through this video, you're not just supporting an aid organization, you're supporting actual people. Head to givedirectly.org/cogito to join the campaign, or use the YouTube giving feature to support Give Directly's broader efforts across Africa. Even small contributions are impactful, and you'll get updates on how the people and village have changed. We can show what happens when real people come together to invest in each other. I really hope you enjoyed this video. A link to my Patreon is down below if you want to help support the channel. All patrons get early access to all videos and get to join a Discord server with me and other patrons. Sources I've used are also in the description.